to begin again?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Escobar.
Your Honor, the defense would call Curtis Judson Reeves.
Raise your right hand, sir.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
It's staticky for the voice.
Good afternoon, Mr. Reeves.
Good afternoon, sir.
Mr. Reeves, would you please state your full name for the record and spell it?
Curtis Judson Reeves, R-E-E-V-E-S, Jr.
Mr. Reeves, are you married?
Yes, sir, I am.
And to whom are you married?
Vivian Reeves.
And when did you get married?
October of 1967.
Do you have children?
Yes, sir, I do. I have a son and a daughter.
What are their names and what are their occupations?
Matthew is a police officer in Tampa, and my daughter works for the bank here in Dade City.
Mr. Reeves, I'm going to first start focusing on some of your education. Please tell the court, did you graduate from high school?
Yes, sir, I did, in 1961.
And what high school did you graduate from?
I went to Hillsborough High School.
While attending Hillsborough High School, did you develop an area of interest to possibly pursue post your high school diploma?
Yes, sir, I did. I joined the Naval Reserve between my junior and my senior year. I joined the Naval Reserve in Tampa there.
And what is the Naval Reserve?
Well, it's a 6-year program that you go into. You do 2 years of active duty, 6 years obligation. It's a military obligation.
And did you start that program while you were still in high school?
Yes, sir, I did.
And explain to the court how that took place.
I joined the Naval Reserve between my junior and my senior year, went to boot camp, and then as soon as I got out of high school, I went to submarine school in Connecticut.
Now, submarine school, meaning that you were going to be working the submarines?
Yes, sir. Submarine service.
Now, when you graduated from high school, what did you do then?
I went in the Navy for 2 years. I spent 2 years on a submarine in the U.S. Navy. And at the end of that time, then I reverted to my reserve time.
Okay. What was your position there in the Navy in the submarines?
I was a leading seaman for probably about 1.5 years or so, 2 years, and I took the test for promotion. So as I got out, I was a machinist mate, 3rd class.
Now, you get out of the Navy. You're still in the reserve. You still have to participate in your
Monthly meetings,
active.
yes, sir. Monthly meetings, and then 2 weeks active duty each year.
Okay. Your choice of going into the military right after high school, did that play a role in you wanting to have a further education?
Yes, sir. I was interested in the GI Bill. I didn't think I'd be able to afford college, so I wanted to get the GI Bill, which was part of the military program.
Now, after you got out of the military, after that 2-year period, did you begin to work?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what occupation or what job did you first obtain?
I was hired by General Telephone at the time, GTE. I was ultimately designated as a heavy construction lineman.
Okay, what is a heavy construction lineman?
We replaced what used to be called open wire leads, which was, if you remember all the cross arms that used to be up there with all the wires, we replaced those with cables. It was running cables in the neighborhoods, running cables between different offices, just expanding the telephone service in general.
How long did you do that for?
About 2 years, sir.
And then what happened?
At the end of that 2-year period, I applied, I think, about that same time for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and Tampa PD.
Why were you choosing a law enforcement career now?
I guess I was in the service, so to speak. I was kind of accustomed to the regimen of the life. I saw law enforcement as an opportunity to serve the community.
And so you applied to both of these particular outfits, and who do you get a call from first?
Tampa PD, they both interviewed me. Tampa PD called with a job offer first.
Okay, and what year was that?
That was in 1966.
Let's talk a little bit about your initial years there with TPD. Did you go to the academy?
Yes, sir, I did.
How did that process work initially?
Initially, they hired you, and I spent about a week or two on the street with a corporal, and then the academy started. So then I went to the academy, which was there at the police department in those days. I graduated before Christmas in 1966.
Okay. And once you graduated, let's talk a little bit about your time there with the academy. The academy lasts for how many weeks, you said?
I think it was like 300 and something hours, if I remember correctly.
And were you elected for a particular position as part of your academy class?
Well, I was the vice president of the class, yes, sir.
Were you given any awards as a result of your participation there at the academy?
I was given an award called, I think it was called an award of achievement, which was kind of the best all-around performer during the academy, I suppose.
Did that particular award at some point in time become even more special to you?
I'm not sure the exact time frame, but my son's been in law enforcement for about 12 or 13 years, and he got the same award.
Finish the academy, do you start your service to the community?
Yes, sir.
And what position do you first occupy as a law enforcement officer with TPD?
At first, you're a probationary officer, so you ride with a field training officer. In those days, it was a corporal. So you're assigned with a corporal. And I think the probationary period's like 4 to 6 months, something like that.
So you're working patrol?
Yes, sir.
How old are you at this point in time, Mr. Reeves?
I'm probably about 24, 23, 24.
Okay. Now, going into the community and serving the public, tell the court about your experiences as working as a patrol officer in the streets of Tampa back then.
It was quite an experience. I never realized how many problems were in the community. I mean, you're constantly going from call to call with high activity levels of all sorts of activities that require police presence.
And the activities are you talking about, are there activities that sometimes result in serious injuries?
Absolutely. Very, very high percentage of injuries, fights, thefts.
Robberies?
Yes, sir. Thefts.
Thefts?
Murders, I guess you could say. Well, I know you could. I've responded to a couple of those as a young officer. A lot of domestic disputes. That was one of our heavy calls in those days.
In experiencing your first couple of years as a law enforcement officer, did you have an opportunity to see individuals that were seriously injured as a result of someone else's hands?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. That was I guess you could say that was a daily occurrence. There was always somebody hurt by someone for something.
Did you ever respond to domestic violence calls?
Rather frequently, yes, sir.
And did you see the injuries that had been perpetrated between one individual and another in domestic violence?
Yes, sir, I did.
With their hands?
With their hands in every tool imaginable.
Did you see injuries such as a broken orbital bone?
I did see a lot of eye injuries, Yes, sir. One of the,
broken jaws,
oh, yeah, yes, sir.
broken noses,
Yes, sir.
facial laceration.
Yes, sir. One of the responsibilities for the zone that I worked was Tampa General Hospital, so you got to see a lot of the injuries that came there from other zones around the city. So
Back in that period of time, was it just going to the person's house and seeing the injuries on their person, or was it a follow-up also and going to the hospital?
well, if you were available and it was a serious enough offense, you followed it up at the hospital. If not, then someone else could follow it up. At one point in time, we actually ended up with what we call a hospital man that was there all the time. So, but in those early years, you followed up on your own, and if somebody was coming from the hospital from somewhere else in the city, then you could be dispatched there to deal with their victim.
Prior to starting your career in law enforcement, had you ever experienced anything like that on a daily basis, seeing some of those tragedies that occur day in and day out?
It was an absolute eye-opening. And the answer, no. Nobody can have that kind of experience. The only way you have that kind of experience is if you're in law enforcement.
Now, you marry Mrs. Reeves, I think you told me in October of 1967?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In 1968, did you apply for a promotion?
Yes, sir. There was it's called the Selective Enforcement Unit, had an opening. The corporal that was my field training officer was in that unit, and he let me know about it, so I applied for it. Yes, sir.
Okay. And by that time, I guess you had only been on the force for just a couple of years.
About a year and a half.
Okay. And describe to the court what this Selective Enforcement Unit was all about.
Well, the Selective Enforcement Unit was a small group of officers working plain clothes on marked cars. We attacked high crime grid areas. We called them grids. We targeted crimes that were high activity crimes that were going on in particular neighborhoods and areas. We worked a lot of stakeouts, that sort of thing.
And were those dangerous assignments with the selective use?
It was pretty dangerous, yes, sir. We did a lot of stakeouts. We did a lot of, we were able to do a lot of crime, come across crimes in progress. We worked stakeouts, that sort of thing, yes, sir.
Far greater danger?
Yes, sir.
Far greater responsibility?
Yes, sir.
More training in order to handle those things?
Yes, sir.
How long did you work in that particular unit?
I was in that unit for about 2 years.
Now, working those types of high-risk crimes, volatile situations,
Yes, sir.
anxiety,
Very anxiety producing, yes, sir.
was it even far more anxiety producing than the first year and a half that you had with the force there working patrol?
Well, I think in SEU we got there quicker, or perhaps sometimes while the crime was going on, where in patrol is most of the time you get there kind of after it's over with. You know.
So in doing stakeouts and robberies and what have you, you're having to intervene during
Yes, sir.
very stressful situations?
Yes, sir.
Who was your sergeant in that unit?
John Brannigan.
And tell me about that sergeant.
He was my mentor, one of my mentors. He was a good guy. He was well liked around the department. He was very knowledgeable in what he was trying to do. Undercover work is quite a bit different than working in patrol, so he had a good training program, gave me some good insight into what the expectations were, that kind of thing.
So you were in selective enforcement for a couple of years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what led you to another division?
I had started pursuing fugitives. We found out we had a very high recidivism rate on people that there were warrants on. So I started in the pursuit of fugitives, people that were wanted on warrants already.
Tell the court why, at that moment in your career, why this fugitive issue was an important issue for the department.
Well, there was the crime in that time period was pretty high, and there was a lot of an analysts trying to figure out exactly what the causation was, who was doing it, that sort of thing. And I had a little bit of a heads up on the fact that recidivists had been identified. That were people that had been in jail before, or people that actually had warrants, which we kind of knew anyway, that were also committing crimes.
And was there a department at that point in time at TPD that would handle just strictly warrants?
No, sir, there wasn't.
Okay. And did you approach someone in an effort to try to start a program that would help in that regard?
Yes, sir, I did.
And who did you approach?
Well, I approached my sergeant first, and then ultimately the captain and the major for that division.
And what did you propose to them?
I proposed that they give me a little freedom so that I could pursue some of the folks that were wanted, and they liked the idea and gave me the opportunity.
What division were you working at this point in time? Were you still in selective enforcement? Had you moved over into another division? What was your official unit that you were supposed to be working out of?
I was still in the selective enforcement unit. At that time, it was part of the patrol division.
Okay. And so you started off on your own trying to find fugitives.
Yes, sir.
Dangerous aspect of your employment.
Well, most of the folks that you go after, they know you're coming.
And so you were, at least initially, geared toward doing that yourself.
Yes, sir.
Did you, at some point in time, either request or were you given some help?
I had some pretty good success with it. It was successful enough to where another officer was assigned to me, and ultimately there ended up being about 3 of us that were doing it.
So they actually, the Tampa Police Department formed a unit specifically for the seeking and arresting of fugitives.
At that point, yes, sir. It really didn't become a formal, like a formal division at that point. But after I was transferred out, they continued the program for, as far as I know, they're still doing it.
Now, as a result of spearheading this particular program, did that help you in your advancement there with TPD?
I had some pretty good successes, and it was recognized by the detective division. So I had an opportunity during that 2 years to spend some 30, 60-day, sometimes 90-day temporary assignments to the detective division to fill in if detectives were sick, injured, or tied up, or shorthanded, that sort of thing.
And did that spearhead you into an opportunity for advancement?
Yes, sir. I had an opportunity to go to the detective division about 2 years after I got into the selective enforcement unit.
And so that, if my calculations are correct, you went into the detective division a mere 3.5 years after you started working as a patrol officer for the Tampa Police Department.
Yes, sir. That's about right.
And what division were you selected to participate as a detective with the Tampa Police Department?
At that time, it was called the Homicide and Robbery Bureau.
So 3.5 years into your law enforcement career, you're selected to go into the Homicide Robbery Bureau.
Yes, sir.
Was that one of the high priority divisions within the Tampa Police Department?
At that time, yes, sir. I think they still have some distinction around the country. The homicide folks do.
And so what was your assignment now in homicide?
When you first get there, you're usually assigned a detective to sort of work, learn your way around. They send you off to a few schools to get your feet on the ground. It was a pretty small unit at that time. It was probably only about 9 or 10 guys. And basically what you do is anybody that comes across something that's kind of a hot type crime or something that's going to take a lot of latent investigation, then you would just kind of jump on board with that guy and help him work through that case.
So sort of when you first started in this unit, you were kind of helping those that were far more experienced than
Right.
you were in their work in trying to solve homicides.
Right. Yes, sir.
Did you learn in that program?
Well, yes, sir, I did. And we also investigated, felony assaults, homicides, robberies, and adult sex crimes. So you kind of built a pretty good base for learning how to latent investigate.
In those particular divisions, were you also exposed to some of the tragedies that happened in our community concerning injuries that people face either in a robbery or in a serious aggravated battery, those kinds of things?
Yes, sir, I was.
Did you see some of the injuries that were caused by the human hand
Absolutely, yes, sir.
or by an object that was either used to hit or to throw at someone?
Yes, sir.
And did those activities by individuals that committed those crimes, those activities resulted in serious bodily injury?
Yes, sir. And death, okay, yeah.
You worked as a homicide robbery detective for how long?
I was in detective division for about 6.5 years, and I think probably about 5 years, thereabouts.
In homicide.
Yes, sir.
In 1973, what happened?
I think 73 or 74, I had my gallbladder removed, so I was off work for about 6 or 7 weeks.
When you came back from that particular surgery, what was happening in and around the town of Tampa that resulted in you having to be assigned to a particular type of crime?
Well, before I left homicide, I was investigating large-scale fuel thefts that were basically armed robberies, in some cases kidnappings, and I had worked some pretty high-profile robbery cases on armored cars and grocery stores. So I had kind of built a little bit of expertise in some of the high-dollar stuff and how to detect it. So when I came back, the captain at that time was called Larceny Bureau, and I think it might have also been called General Investigations. They had some high-profile steel thefts from some steel plants and stuff like that. So they asked me to see if I could do something with those cases.
You talk about $1 million thefts.
In some cases, yes, sir.
And so when you came back from your gallbladder surgery, did they ask you to focus on these types of investigations?
Yes, sir.
And while you were focusing on these particular types of investigations, what division were you in? Were you still in homicide? Were you being lent out to another division? How was that process working?
I was assigned to that, at that point, I was still in the detective division, still assigned as a detective. I was just working in a different bureau.
You were running?
Just working in a different bureau.
Okay.
They were called bureaus at the time.
And how long were you in that particular bureau working in that fashion?
Probably late 75 or into 76.
Okay. Now, in 75, 76, do you get a promotion?
Yes, sir.
And would you tell the court what promotion you received in 75, 76?
I was promoted to a sergeant in the patrol division.
When someone gets promoted to the position of sergeant and they're in the detective division, what happens within that department? Do you leave that detective division?
Yes, sir.
And tell the court what happens physically when you become a sergeant, for example.
Well, when you're promoted to sergeant, you end up back in the patrol division. You're supervising a squad of officers, which could be, at that time, it was either 10 or 12 people. They work a zone in the city somewhere, and you supervise, train, and evaluate those officers.
Throughout all this period of time, are you taking training courses in order to advance your own skills within the department?
Yes, sir, I am.
And are those both in-house training courses as well as training courses outside of the department?
Yes, sir. The department had training programs for almost all the officers. There was an incentive program at the time that kind of encouraged you to seek training. I was also going to college. I started in '72 and graduated in '76.
Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about that. You started in 1972 to go to college, and was that the benefit of that GI Bill?
That was that GI Bill, yes, sir. And they also had at that time a law enforcement educational program.
And so where did you start your college studies?
I started at Hillsborough Community College.
Okay, and after finishing at Hillsborough Community College, where did you go?
University of Tampa.
And did you graduate from the University of Tampa?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you graduate magna cum laude?
Yes, sir, I did.
And while you were at the University of Tampa graduating magna cum laude, were you married?
Yes, sir, I was.
And did you have children?
Yes, sir.
And were you working the details that you just explained to the court during that period of time?
Yes, sir.
So you're promoted now to sergeant, so you're back now on the road.
Yes, sir.
Do your responsibilities change as a law enforcement officer or detective when you become a sergeant now on the road?
Yes, sir.
And how do your responsibilities change?
Well, you're a supervising officer now, so you have to be alert to all their needs. You have to provide the training that they have. You respond to the calls if it's a hot call that they have. You try to give them the support that they need to be able to function in their capacity as patrol officers.
So now you're not only responsible for your own safety,
Yes, sir.
but you're responsible for who else's safety.
The squad.
Did you take that responsibility seriously?
Absolutely. Yes, sir, I did.
In being the sergeant supervising members of your squad, were you able to recognize strengths and weaknesses of your men?
Yes, sir. Part of your responsibility was to maintain a file if they had issues or if they did some good things or if they got accolades from some particular group. So you had a pending evaluation file, and each year you had to perform an evaluation on each officer.
And those officers that had weaknesses, what would you do in an effort to change those weaknesses?
Well, you would try to develop that officer in the areas that you perceived as a deficiency.
Was that a necessary component for you?
It was for me. I did. I tried to find schools that they could attend, that sort of stuff, to try to help in their weak areas. Yes, sir.
Did those sergeants before you also help you
Absolutely.
throughout your career?
Yes, sir, they did. I learned from almost every supervisor that I worked for.
In 1976, you're a sergeant in patrol.
Yes, sir.
Are you gathering some knowledge of what's happening in our country, around the world, in reference to violent crimes?
Yes, sir, I am.
Tell the court what happened in 1976 that furthered your career.
Probably in 75 or 76, there was a lot of issues that were going on around the country that were difficult for law enforcement agencies to handle because they didn't have the people that were trained in the particular expertises that they needed to be able to deal with those situations. Most of them were of a violent nature. So I made a proposal to the department.
Before making that proposal to the department, did you call other departments in an effort to educate yourself of what other departments were doing?
Yes, sir, I did. I researched the issue. There was a lot of violent crime that was occurring in an unusual manner that was difficult for the average agency to be able to deal with it. So I made phone calls around the country at agencies that had problems like that. I checked with the FBI. I made them as a liaison. They gave me information. There was information through other agencies and other departments that helped me build a little bit of a background to identify those types of issues and some solutions.
And one of the solutions that you came up with, was that the SWAT program?
Yes, sir, it was.
And explain to the court what the SWAT program is all about.
Well, the SWAT program is generally a group of officers that are specially trained and specially equipped to deal with high-risk situations. That's kind of it in a nutshell. You kind of get called in when the patrol officers, it's too hazardous, or the patrol officers are not equipped or trained to handle that particular type of offense. At
that point in time, did the Tampa Police Department have a SWAT unit?
No, sir.
Did you believe that that unit was necessary for the continued enforcement and to the protection of our community?
Yes, sir, I did.
And tell the court exactly what you did in 1976 in an effort to try to make that happen for our community.
The major of the division that I worked in at that time, and I had a conversation. I showed him the proposal that I had, the research that I had conducted, and he liked the idea and wanted to take it to the chief and see what had happened, what could happen, or what we could do with that kind of information, and that's what he did.
Now, at this time, you were just a sergeant in a patrol squad.
Yes, sir.
And so when the chief got a hold of your proposal, did you have a conversation with the chief?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was it that the chief wanted you to do now?
The chief liked the proposal. He read the documents that I had. He was well aware of what was going on in the world. He thought it was an opportunity for our department to be prepared to protect our community then and in the future. He gave me the okay to research how to form one, what to do with it, what kind of training, what the selection process would be with the officers, what kind of equipment we needed, and that kind of stuff.
So he assigned you the task of actually starting that program and designing that program and implementing that program?
Yes, sir.
Had you had any experience in doing that before?
No, sir.
And so how did you go about doing that process?
I tried to identify as many areas as I could that had information that would help me out. I went to agencies that had SWAT teams already established, which there really wasn't that many around in the mid-'70s. I got information from them. I talked with their trainers. I talked with their team leaders. I included, again, the FBI, which had helped me out before. There were several other organizations. The National Rifle Association at that time was the big qualifier, the certificate. They gathered information from all over the countries, from IACP, International Association of Police Chiefs, and things like that, and kind of put it all together. I made some liaisons there. They sent me information and data that they were able to put together for me.
Now, you're trying to gather all this information from agencies throughout the country, but you have one more responsibility, and that's now who's going to train your men.
Right.
And so how are you going to tackle that problem?
Well, when I looked into the training, there weren't too many people around that had the type of training that we needed. So I suggested that we select some officers and then we look at some specialized training and start sending officers to that training with the idea in mind that they would attend that training, learn everything that they could, bring back that information, and train the officers.
And so who were the officers that were going to have to go get that training and then bring it back?
That was primarily myself and another sergeant that he was going to help put the team together. He helped with the research, and he and I, we set out to become SWAT trainers.
Did you go to various programs throughout the country in order to try to educate yourself in the tactics necessary to implement and work a SWAT team unit?
Yes, sir, I did. The department,
FBI,
yes, sir.
International Association of Police Captains?
Well, yes, sir. There was quite a few organizations that I went to. IACP was one of them, the FBI.
U.S. Army?
The Army did some marksmanship training for us. We also had we had our own capabilities for training firearms, and we did a firearms evaluation program. I set that up, and we figured out what kind of weapons that we wanted, and then we purchased them.
Now, not only was the education important, meaning your education and this other sergeant, because you all had to at least initially train your men, correct? And was it,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Was it your goal to also send your men independently of you all to training programs as well?
Once we did the initial selection process, we kind of conducted our own. We took a list of folks that had applied for the program, and we went through the selection process on the individuals, and then we went through a training program to see if they could kind of pick up on what we were doing, and then we tried to send them to schools as they came available so that they could do the same thing.
Now, the selection process for individuals in such a volatile unit that was going to be, I guess, spearheading some of the most dangerous assignments with TPD, correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
You had to select unique individuals to work in that program.
That would probably be the word, yes, sir.
And who set up the criteria as to who was going to be selected for the tactical squad of the Tampa Police Department?
I did.
And would you tell the court what it was that you felt was necessary based upon your conversations with others that had SWAT teams in the form of the right person?
One of the things that we wanted to do is make sure we had officers that knew already the laws and had already interacted with the community, had good interpersonal skills. So we established a 2-year, they needed to be an officer for at least 2 years. We looked at physical training, and we sort of, I kind of put it together from what I got from other agencies and tried to fit it into what I thought would work at our agency. So we went through personnel files to make sure there was no disciplinary history or no medical history that would preclude them from the training. We talked with their supervisors and their managers, each of the candidates that had applied for the job. So and at one point, I think once the selection was made, I think we had a psychologist on staff of the department, so we did a psych study on everybody.
And what were you looking for in that psych study?
Anything that would not be something desirable for the assignment they were about to go into.
And did yourself and the other sergeant that were on the squad, did you all as well take that psych evaluation?
Yes, sir.
And why was it important for you and the other sergeant to likewise take the same psych evaluation and meet the same requirements as your men?
Well, there was a couple of different ways to run it around the country, and we felt that probably the best thing would be for the requirements to be the same for everybody.
Supervisors or not?
Supervisors or not. If you ran the team, or if you were the newest guy on the team or whatever, your job was to do exactly the same thing in physical training and all the testing as everybody else.
How cooperative were these agencies throughout the country, including the FBI?
Very cooperative.
And so were you in fact able to design, develop, and implement the first tactical squad, SWAT team for the Tampa Police Department?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was the name of that unit?
Well, we ended up with, it was called the Tactical Response Team.
Was that tactical response team, meaning that you all were going to work as one cohesive unit?
Absolutely.
Did you develop standard operating procedures and policies?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did those get approved all the way up to the captain? And
Yes, sir.
The chief of police?
Yes, sir, it did.
Now, you're still working a sergeant's position in patrol,
Yes, sir.
as well as now also handling, being the, I guess, co-director of the tactical response team,
Right.
you and the
My-
other sergeant.
Right, we kind of divided things up. The training and research was my area, and firearms training. We took care of different things. He did a lot of the administrative stuff on the front end. I did most of the hands-on.
Did that program prove to be successful?
Yes, sir, it did.
Is that program still in operation
Yes, sir, it
as we
is.
sit here today in 2017?
Yes, sir, it is.
Now, in 1980, you were promoted again, is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Could you tell the court about your promotion in 1980?
I had taken the lieutenant's test. I got a call one day and says, "You're a lieutenant." That was about the extent of it.
And did your position within the squad change, meaning your position within the patrol squad, your position within the SWAT team? What changed by that title?
Well, from the patrol perspective, sergeant is in charge of a squad. Lieutenant would be in charge of probably 4 squads, maybe 5 squads. It depends on what the assignment was. So you could have multiple squads and sergeants reporting to the lieutenant. That was the makeup there. As far as on the team, the way it was initially designed so that we would not lose expertise as people got promoted or transferred is we tried to set it up so that no matter what rank you were, no matter where you worked, you always was in the team. You stayed part of the team.
So, Mr. Reeves, now you're not only responsible for a unit or a squad of 10, 11 officers, now you're responsible for 4 to 5 squads,
Yes, sir.
and the safety and the life of those men as well.
Yes, sir.
Did you have to go through the evaluation process to make sure that those men likewise were well-trained so that they could not only protect the community, but that they would go home at night after serving their time?
Yes, sir. I think as a lieutenant, I took the job serious, so I worked closely with the sergeants to ensure that they adhered to all the rules and regulations and offered whatever assistance I could to help if they had particular issues in their squads.
Now, you indicated earlier that it was your main function for training of your men in the SWAT team.
Yes, sir.
That is a group that goes into the most volatile and dangerous
Yes, sir.
conditions,
Yes, sir.
day in and day out.
Yes, sir.
What was your sense of responsibility with reference to them?
Well, when you're in charge, everything that goes right's your fault, and everything that goes wrong is your fault. So you try to stay as informed as you can. You try to keep your people as sharp and as on edge as they can. You try to keep them as well trained as you can make it happen, so that if something does happen or when it does happen, that you handle it effectively and efficiently.
Did you continue to go to courses to teach you defense tactics and officer survival tactics during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
Did your men,
Yes, sir.
did you have in-house training between yourself and your men to make sure that not only you, but they were well-equipped and knowledgeable on how to handle these volatile situations?
Yes, sir. The protocol was that if anybody went to a specialized class, which obviously we couldn't send everybody, but when you came back, it was your job to retrain everybody on the team to receive the training that you had. Plus, we also set up in-service training. We had monthly training days, and on those training days each month, we would have a different protocol for the type of training that we would do to make sure we keep ourselves updated on whatever was going on.
So you continue to be a lieutenant with the SWAT team.
Yes, sir.
And in 1984, were you promoted again?
Yes, sir, I was.
And in 1984, you were promoted to what rank?
Captain.
what are the responsibilities now that as a captain with Tampa Police Department you have undertaken as a result of that promotion?
It kind of depends on your assignment. If you're in patrol division, the city was divided in half, so you were the shift commander on in whatever district I was assigned to, and I was in both of them at some time or the other.
So now you're responsible for an entire shift.
Now you're responsible for an entire shift. You have 2 lieutenants that work for you, and you could have anywhere from 8 to 10 squads of officers working for you.
Were you also asked to serve as a liaison to the Office of the State Attorney?
Yes, sir, I was.
Was that early on in your position as a captain or sometime thereafter?
It depends on your assignment. Normally, the liaison came out of the detective division. So when I was transferred to the detective division, they asked me to be the liaison with the state attorney, which you try to resolve issues with the state attorney's office that they have with a PD and vice versa. You try to keep things working smoothly, and paperwork, that sort of stuff.
I would imagine that takes some good communication skills.
Yes, sir.
You were in 1986 promoted as now the captain of the homicide squad?
I was in homicide for a while, yes, sir.
And again, at that time, was that considered I don't want to say the word the most important, because every aspect of law enforcement is important, but certainly recognized as one of the more important divisions within the department?
Well, I think the people that work there think so. And you're just a captain like anybody else, but that particular assignment may have some status to it, yes, sir.
And how long were you the captain of the homicide squad?
I really don't recollect how long I was there. I was there for a while, and then I was a captain in the larceny bureau for a while, and I'm going to say a year or so between the two of them, and I don't remember the dates or how long.
In the late 70s and early 80s, did you become a firearms instructor?
Yes, sir, I did.
And explain to the court what that position held and how you become a firearms instructor.
When we started the team, we needed specialized training in weapons and firearms. And so I was sent off to a variety of different schools to build my certification. I went to some sniper schools, counter sniper schools, military schools, FBI. I applied for certifications as a pistol, rifle, shotgun instructor, a home safety instructor, and all those things go together and you get a certification as a police firearms instructor, which is a little bit higher up the recognition chain than the other ones are.
And so with this authority to instruct on firearms, what are you able to do?
Well, you're basically able to instruct pretty much in any area of firearms utilization that you can imagine, whether it's recruit academy, auxiliary academy, SWAT team, special weapons, all that sort of stuff. You're just about certified in everything.
When you initially became certified, was your primary function your SWAT team?
At that point, yes, sir, most of it.
And did that responsibility grow?
Yes, sir, it did.
How did it grow?
Well, we only had a certain number of firearms instructors at the time through the academy. The academy had moved from the police building by that time into, we had our own academy at the time, so we were instructing other agencies. So we had not only in-service training classes for the department, but we also had recruit academies for other agencies, and then we had auxiliary academies as well. So the firearms instruction kind of got pretty busy during that time frame. So because I was involved in it, I was asked to kind of take a lead on the instruction and become like a program coordinator.
So you became the program coordinator for the firearms instructors that were going to be used for TPD, both for in-service and at the academy?
Yes, sir.
Now, the exposure that you had with all this training all took place at various locations throughout the country, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Officer survival, general investigation. Remember starting to teach yourself some of these courses at the academy?
Yes, sir. I had picked up some expertise in some of the schools, and so I was asked to teach some classes at the academy. And I had probably 2 or 3 different classes that I was teaching at the time. Anything from general investigations to sex crimes and officer survival is part of the weapons program, or I made it a part of the weapons program. So I went to officer survival schools at the time too.
Now, were you also a board member of the Tampa Police Pistol and Rifle Club?
Yes, sir. At that time, the Tampa Police Pistol and Rifle Club was on property that was leased from the city. It was located out of West Hillsborough Avenue. We had a very active law enforcement program out there, and I was on the board of directors for a couple of years, I think.
So you're running these various segments of law enforcement as a captain there at TPD, and still running tactical, still running your response team, your SWAT team. What happens in 1988?
In 1988, I got cancer.
And what resulted as the fact that you had developed cancer?
I ended up with surgery and radiation.
What was your thought process about your career as a law enforcement officer when you got cancer?
Well, I think with the dedication that I had, it was kind of devastating.
And what were you thinking about your future?
Well, I was concerned about it. I guess anytime you get cancer, you're crazy if you don't worry about it. And then the radiation, I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to keep doing what I was doing.
What you love to do? Did you come back to the department?
Yes, sir.
And what was your goal when you came back to the department?
Well, I think you try to get your energy back, you try to get your strength back, you try to get yourself going again.
Had the doctors told you a benchmark for at least some relief for you in your own mind at that time?
Yes, sir. I think the consensus of opinion was if you were cancer-free for 5 years, then you were probably insurable. So, you didn't want to change jobs right then.
So you stayed working in the department for how many years after your cancer?
5 years.
And was that because you wanted to make sure that you were going to be cancer-free and
Yes, sir.
you had benefits there at TPD that paid for your health insurance,
Yes, sir.
life insurance? In 1991, were you asked by the chief of police to take care of a delicate situation that was taking place with vice and narcotics?
Yes, sir.
And did the chief want you to go over there
Yes, sir.
and help things out?
Yes, sir.
And did you?
Yes, yes, sir.
When you went over there as a captain of vice and narcotics, was there much help for you?
Well, when I first got there was a major in the division that normally would run that division. And shortly after I got there, he was promoted to to a temporary position. So yeah, I ran it pretty much by myself for a year or so.
After your recovery from cancer, were you thinking towards retirement?
Yes, sir.
And in 1993, did you retire from the Tampa Police Department?
Yes, sir, I did.
So now you think you're going to retire and you're just going to go out there and enjoy your retirement.
That was a false hope.
So what happens in 1993 after you retired?
Well, before I retired, I heard about a position that was coming available locally at Busch Gardens. So I applied for it.
Why would you apply when you're thinking for retirement?
Well, my wife had a few years to go in her retirement, and our plan was to work until we were 62. That's what we both wanted to do. So I said, hey, I was a little bit young at 51 to be retiring anyway, and so I applied for that job. And,
Now, when you retired, you got your benefits from TPD, is that correct?
yes,
You've
sir, I
invested.
did. Yes, sir.
And so now you saw this opportunity at Busch Gardens. What was the actual position that you applied for at Busch Gardens?
It was a director of security.
And did you receive that employment?
Yes, sir, I did.
So now you received a completely different position
Yes, sir, it
in
was.
security.
Absolutely.
Tell the court the differences as the head of security for Busch Gardens versus your positions that you had with the Tampa Police Department.
Well, the personnel were about the same. I was supervising somewhere between 75 and 100 plus people, I suppose. And at one time up to 300 because of some merging of departments that I was asked to take on additional responsibilities. But the point was that the mission was completely different. Even though I was still doing the same things I'd done before, managing people, the mission went from a law enforcement mission into a public relations
And when
position.
you're saying public relations, what do you mean by that?
Well, you're not into enforcing the laws, you're into making people's, when they come to Busch Gardens, they want to enjoy themselves. So you try to keep a safe environment, you're more public relations oriented. The entire philosophy changes as far as dealing with people.
Busch Gardens wants their customers to be happy,
Absolutely, yes, sir.
to be safe,
Yes, sir.
and how you handle those customers is extremely important.
We had about 3 or 4 million people come in a year, so yes, you don't, you've heard the customer is always right. That's pretty much the philosophy there. You try to deal with things as carefully as you can. You try not to upset the apple cart, so to speak. You want to do the right thing. You want to train your people to do that, and that was part of my responsibility. Was one of the reasons they hired me was for training. So that's one of the things that we did, is we trained the officers how to effectively do that.
And you're talking about security officers,
Yes, sir.
not high-paying security officer positions.
Not as high paid as law enforcement, yes, sir.
And now you were having thousands upon thousands of people that were coming into this park that you were going to have to interact with.
Yes, sir.
Your group was going to have to interact with.
Yes, sir.
And you had to provide that group with a positive experience,
That was the goal, yes, sir.
an enjoyable experience.
That was it.
There was one more issue there in Busch Gardens. It was the alcohol issue.
Yes, sir.
Tell the court what the alcohol issue at Busch Gardens was.
Well, Busch Gardens gave away free beer. That created a rather unique set of circumstances when you were trying to balance the free alcohol with the guest experience. So I think that became quite a unique opportunity to learn something new.
Families dominated those amusement parks.
Families were, yes, all age groups, all nationalities, all everything.
Children.
Yes, sir.
getting lost,
Yes, sir.
frantic parents.
Yes, sir.
Who trained those individuals that worked for you in an effort to deal with those very delicate and sensitive issues?
I had a good staff that had a good depth of experience. They were a tremendous asset. I hired law enforcement officers. I hired law enforcement that had expertise in the particular areas that I needed training, and they provided the training for us or to my managers so that they could share it with the employees.
Did you also implement security measures for theft?
Yes, sir.
That was one of your also areas of expertise
Yes, sir.
at TPD.
Yes, sir.
And when you arrived there at Bush to be the head of security, did they have any system, sophisticated system, in order to monitor theft by employees as well as patrons?
They had in the security department, they had a couple of investigators. I brought in security cameras. I brought in cameras that could be easily concealed. I brought in a hidden camera program to work with employee theft. We concentrated on the large thefts. Obviously, if you got 30, 40,000 people in your park and you have some retail establishments, you're going to have some theft. So we started a theft program, not just for our employees, but also for the guests. That was one of the things that we implemented.
Did you also work with the community concerning issues that would arise with Busch Gardens?
Yes, sir. If there was problems with the neighborhood because of traffic or whatever, I would usually go out and visit with them and try to resolve the issues with them. I also work with I think the National Safety Council had an office over there. I had a building across the street that wasn't being utilized, so we allowed the Tampa Police Motorcycle Unit to use that at our expense. We allowed, I think there was a neighborhood watch program and maybe even a Chamber of Commerce. We allowed them to use that building, and so I liaison with those folks.
Now, while you were working head of security for Busch Gardens, did you stop your training and just use whatever training you had received with the department?
No, sir, I didn't. When you move from the law enforcement arena into the private security, it's completely different. There were several professional organizations that I joined. One was the American Society for Industrial Security, which was I joined that almost as soon as I found out about it. And then there was another one that was indicative pretty much of theme parks all over the country, and that was the American Society for Amusement Park Safety and Security. So I joined those two organizations, and I found out what they were doing, where they were doing it, and I started taking classes that would enhance me toward or my learning curve into the areas that was of interest to that industry.
Mr. Reeves, I'm going to show you, first of all, what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 206, and it goes all the way A through Z, and double A through double Z, and triple A through M. It's a composite exhibit. Ask you if you recognize that exhibit.
Yes, sir, I do.
And what is that an exhibit of?
These are probably 3/4 of the certificates that I acquired throughout my career, both at Tampa PD and while I was at Busch Gardens, and the activities that I was involved in. I'm going to say that's most of them. There may be a dozen or so that I'm aware of that I don't have.
I'm going to show you now the Busch Gardens one, which are the Defendant's Exhibit Number 205. And it's a composite exhibit of 25 pages, A through Y, and ask you if you recognize these exhibits.
Yes, sir. These are the schools that I attended, the certificates that I acquired, the certifications that I got while I was working at Busch Gardens.
Your Honor, we would move both defense exhibit number 206 as well as defense exhibit number 205 into evidence, I believe, without objection. Yeah.
What's the number?
42 and 43.
What was the number, Mr. Escobar?
I think it's 42 and 43. I'll tell you as soon as I see it. .42 is the certificates for law enforcement. And 43 are the discharge. Mr. Shaw, would you, well, hold up.
No, that's not connected.
It's not. Oh, that's right. Mr. Reeves, I'd like you to turn, if you can, just slightly, keeping, please keep in mind that the mic is going to be here, so I'm going to scoot it just a little bit so that we don't lose your voice in the process. And I'm going to show you the U.S. Naval Submarine School certificate. What is that?
That's the certificate that I got when I graduated from submarine school right after high school.
Okay. Could you please, for the record, tell me what what's the composite? The qualified in submarine certificate.
Well, after you're assigned to a submarine, you have a window of opportunity there that you must qualify yourself in submarines. That means you need to find out, research, study, and take a test on all the operational systems on a submarine. And that's the certificate that I got when I qualified.
Navy training course certificate.
Those are training courses that you need to take for advancement in the military, and that's the notification of the testing and the class.
Another.
Yes, sir. That's another training certificate. Some of those are optional, and some are mandatory if you want to be promoted. So, every opportunity that I got, I signed up for whatever they had to offer.
Okay. What is this?
That's the certificate that I received from the police academy with 328 hours of training in the academy.
Tampa Police Department certificate of outstanding achievement for a recruit in the class of, looks like number 14.
Yes, sir. That was that I alluded to earlier. That was the certificate for being, I guess, the best all around in all the different areas of evaluation during the academy. I think my son won the same award, but it had a little different name.
This one says the Florida Institute for Law Enforcement Certificate of Completion. What was this?
This was an identikit training program, and they used to have a kit that you put together. It was the way that you made a composite when you were not an artist. It had different components to it, so it was a training school to teach you how to make a composite picture of a suspect.
This is likewise the Florida Institute for Law Enforcement at St. Pete JC, interviewing and interrogation.
Yeah, so I think that was, at that time it was called the Reed interview and interrogation technique, which was pretty much a standard around the country. I had been to a preliminary class. This was, I guess, sort of like an addendum or maybe a little bit more advanced class, an interview and interrogation.
The Hillsborough Community College Associates of Arts degree in pre-police science and administration.
Yes, sir. That was the degree that I got at Hillsborough Community College.
And that was in 1974.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I started in 72. I graduated in 74.
Now, when you were going to college, were you going to college just a class here or a class there?
No, sir. Once, as you know, dealing with the federal government and paperwork, once you get into the system, you better stay there. So when I started in 1972, I went to, if the doors were open to the college, I was there. I went 3/4 time year-round until I got my degree in 1976.
While you were working full-time?
Working full-time, getting called out, and trying to raise 2 kids.
State of Florida Police Standards Council Career Development Certificate for intermediate training.
Yes, sir. They had a program at that time. It was an incentive program, and you could enhance your finances minimally, but you could get some money from the state by taking different classes. So I signed up for everything that was available.
I would imagine back in your time, a law enforcement officer with the Tampa Police Department wasn't getting paid a whole lot.
You took every opportunity to make some extra money. And those programs were around, but they were hard to get into, so you had to put in for them a long time ahead of time. So that's an advanced training certificate. I mean, they give you beginner, intermediate, advanced. They elaborate. They get more sophisticated as you go. It prepares you to do a better job at what you're doing.
State of Florida, the Commission on Police Officer Standards and Training. This was an instructor certificate. What is that?
As I got involved in the detective division with the training through the training department, and as I got the SWAT team going, you kind of needed some instructor classifications in order to be able to teach some of the classes to some of the folks that were coming in to see it, other agencies and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a state teaching certificate for law enforcement related classes.
This is to certify that Curtis Reeves has been duly elected as a member of...
That's Alpha Chi. It's a National Honor Society. I got that. I was inducted into that when I graduated from the University of Tampa. And that's
University of Tampa degree, Bachelor's of Science, magna cum laude.
Yes, sir.
And you graduated magna cum laude in what year?
1976.
Department of the Army Certificate of Training, Tampa Police Department. Successfully completed the marksmanship and tactical training on May the 23rd of 1977 through May the 26th of 1977.
Yes, sir. This was some of the special weapons classes that we either brought instructors in to help us with. The Army was very kind to me and actually sent me a couple of instructors so we could have the school at our facility, which cut down the cost to the government. So that was probably one of the first classes, not necessarily the first class in weaponry, but one of the first classes in long gun utilization.
State of Florida Police Standards again, certificate of recognition.
Yes, sir. Those were classes that were available to you. Some were required and some were, and I don't remember if this was or wasn't, but anyway, it was a training. It enhanced your abilities to do the things that you were hired to do. It kept you up to date on laws and that sort of stuff.
United States Army. Completed the sniper, counter sniper course, October of 1977.
Yes, sir. That was at Fort Benning, Georgia. That was a 1,000-yard rifle range, and we were, myself and my counterpart, we were trained in the long-range utilization of riflery. So I guess 1,000-yard shooting. I think that thing was about 2 or 3 weeks long. I don't recollect.
The National Rifle Association of America certified shotgun instructor.
Yes, sir. That was one of the certificates that I alluded to earlier. There's probably a couple of them in there. You had to have some level of experience. You had to take a test, and it gave you the certification that allowed you to, I guess, teach the subjects.
The National Rifle Association certified rifle marksman instructor.
Yes, sir. I met the requirements for their marksmanship instructor by virtue of the military schools and demonstrated skills, I guess you could say.
Certified pistol and marksmanship instructors, same national organization.
Yes, sir. I tried to get as many people as I could into handgun schools. That's where you're going to spend the majority of your time as a SWAT team, and so we wanted to be as proficient as we could, so that's a certification that kind of led to that.
Law Enforcement Officers Training School Certificate of Attendance, Sergeant Curtis J. Reeves, hostage negotiator.
Yes, sir. Dealing with the hostage situation was the up-and-coming thing that kind of was the impetus for kind of getting the team off the ground. So
The SWAT team.
yes, sir. The SWAT team off the ground. So this was a school that gave us the background and the information that we needed to understand the dynamics of a hostage situation.
Federal Bureau of Investigation Training School Certificate of Attendance, Special Tactical Firearms School, 1977 June to July of 1977.
Yes, sir. That's kind of what I alluded to, is those are to develop your proficiency. They include officer survival, use of cover and concealment, that type of information, which is pretty important to a SWAT team. It's really important to anybody, but particularly to SWAT.
National Rifle Association of America, again, police firearms instructor, 1978.
Yeah, so that's a certification there. You had to meet certain requirements to be able to get that certificate, and at that point I had the skills and I had the requirements. And you had to be sponsored by your law enforcement agency as well.
Hillsborough Community College, completed a criminal justice course. This was, looks like in 1979, Curtis J. Reeves.
Yes, sir, that was a class on vicarious liability, which is of course always an interest to law enforcement agencies. So we just tried to keep ourselves abreast of what the latest legal issues were so that we knew not only was it applicable to the SWAT team, but also to regular police work.
Now that vicarious liability appears to have been taught by the Law Enforcement Institute, is that correct?
I think that was yes, sir, it was, and I think there was some name changing going on there, and I may be incorrect, but I think that was part of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. At one point, I think it became the Executive Institute, but in any event, yes, sir, it was a legal group.
Another one appears to have been taught by the Law Enforcement Institute, and that is Officer Survival Tactics. That was done in 1979.
Yes, sir. Those are again, those are the kind of knowledge that law enforcement officers need. That's the kind of knowledge and information that SWAT teams need. And those are the kind of classes that I was being sent to develop my expertise in those areas so that I could train other officers that way.
National Rifle Association certify that Curtis Reeves has completed the police sharpshooter school, 1980.
Yes, sir. That was a class that was held, I think, over in Pinellas County. And again, it was a skills development course.
And the National Rifle Association is an outfit out of Washington, D.C., is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Thanks.
At that time, they were very prevalent in the law enforcement training arena. They were one of the few agencies that really had put together the information that law enforcement agencies needed for their skills development.
This is to certify that Curtis Reeves has completed the police firearms instructor school, and this was again by the National Rifle Association of America. It looks like this is also in 1980, and it says there that you have scored an 86% or more on the 60-round modified 25-yard double action PPC course.
Yes, sir, it does. At Pinellas Police Academy, again, a skills development class. That really isn't that good of a score. I had a weapons problem, but anyway, it was a skills development course. The weapon that I had some malfunctions with it, but still a passing score.
The NRA Home Firearm Responsibility Instructor, what is that about?
Through the Tampa Police Pistol and Rifle Club, I taught handgun safety courses to the public for probably about 4 or 5 years. I took 30 students at a time, once a month, and we ran a handgun safety course. That was a requirement that I fulfilled to give me an extra credential for instructing through the Pistol Club to that group of people.
Again, the Law Enforcement Institute, this being in 1980 as well, a seminar on civil laws and liabilities.
Yes, sir. Again, just trying to stay abreast of current laws and how it would affect law enforcement actions. Something that, as a manager, you almost have to know. You're making decisions that you need to know how those things will impact your actions.
State of Florida, the Commission on Police Officer Standards and Training, specialized training certificate for instructors, techniques, to Curtis Judson Reeves.
Yes, sir. In order to teach, you needed to have an instructor techniques course, and then you needed to update yourself periodically and stay current with your teaching certificate.
And in those particular courses, were they teaching you some of the various things that we've talked about all along?
Yes, sir, they are. Yeah.
Including officer survival?
I'm thinking that one is probably more on presentation to students, the instructor techniques. I think it's how to make a better instructor, how to use training aids to capture attention of your students, that sort of thing.
Okay. Tampa Police Academy Advanced Training Certificate, Instructor Techniques, again, 1979. I think I had one of those out of order there.
Yeah, that was a class sponsored by the department. Pretty much the same thing. We try to keep the instructors at the academy kind of, I guess you could say, on the cutting edge. It's kind of easy to have 2 hours worth of material in a 4-hour block, and we tried to have 4 hours of material in a 2-hour block, and in order for the students to capture it, they taught you how to use all the available training aids to keep the students' attention. Cops are kind of hard to keep their attention.
Public Safety Educators, Los Angeles, California. Guess by this time you were Lieutenant Curtis J. Reeves. What was this about? Survival
Yes.
techniques again?
Yes, sir. Survival techniques. That was rising there was needs for that were rising in the mid-'70s. There was a lot of classes going around. I tried to avail myself or officers or people that worked for me into as many of those as we could. That was a very important time for law enforcement. I guess kind of like today is, Officer survival was, a lot of agencies had lost officers. We'd lost officers in Tampa, so that was the up and coming thing, was to teach your officers how to go home every night,
Federal Bureau of Investigation Training School, effective communication.
Yes, sir. That's how to communicate clearly and concisely to your subordinates, to your peers, both verbally and with documentation, keeping an eye on the legalities of the issues, that sort of stuff.
International Association of Chiefs of Police, I believe you mentioned this organization earlier. This was a class on shooting, classroom, and range instruction.
Yes, so that was a specialized class in Wilmington, North Carolina, with a variety of federal agencies. I think I was probably the only one there from a municipal agency. It was a class, I think, primarily for federal weapons officers or weapons trainers. It had some components of the officer survival, care and concealment, how to use cover and concealment, whether it's protective cover or concealing cover, that sort of thing.
Law Enforcement Officers Training School Certificate of Attendance. This was another anti-sniper and a survival tactics school that you took in 1982.
Yes, sir. This was pretty much self-explanatory. It was some of the weapons systems had changed in a few years there, so it was a familiarization with some of the new weapons systems that were available and what was being encountered in the public by law enforcement agencies and how to kind of compensate for those kinds of things.
Fire Services Association taught this course on vertical rope rescue school. What is vertical rope rescue school?
Well, one of the things that to build skills with the officers, we did a thing called rappelling, traversing. The vertical rope rescue gets you used to, depending on your equipment. You could be hanging under a helicopter or rappelling out of a helicopter off the side of a building. You could use a ladder to build steeples, to access second, third floors of apartment buildings. So it was a skill building, and you learned how to depend upon your equipment and your teammates.
Certificate of completion. This was if I can read it correctly, it was a disturbance and control seminar with the Central Florida Criminal Justice Regional Training Center in Orlando.
Yes, sir. One of the skills that I acquired or one of the responsibilities that I acquired during this period was how to mobilize the agency expeditiously in the event of a need for crowd control. I think the title is disturbance or riot or crowd control. So I had visited several agencies and developed what we called a field force concept that was a mobilization and equipment plan for expediency on the department in case something happened. And what came out of that is I developed new SOPs and policies for the department and a new mobilization plan that the department adopted.
Certificate of appointment. This is a certificate is given in recognition of successfully meeting the requirements established by the National Rifle Association for Curtis J. Reeves, Jr. What was this about?
This was again a credential. It was a course that gave you all the safety requirements as well as the functional requirements for a training program in firearms utilization. So it developing your skills and a training program that teaches you the whys and the wherefores and the impacts of weaponry and that sort of thing.
Federal Bureau of Investigation presents the certificate to Curtis J. Reeves. It was a management seminar. What was that about?
I went to the FBI Academy a couple different times for a couple different programs. That seems to indicate that the FBI Academy, that was probably a management, pretty much what it says, a management seminar. Teaches you how to manage folks, how to manage in the law enforcement environment, how to manage legally, what your legal responsibilities are in the event that you respond to a situation somewhere in your community. You need to know what the impactors are for the decisions that you make.
State of Florida Department of Law Enforcement, this was in, I guess, a program dealing with the executive and organizational changes. Tell me what that was about.
I taught for the Executive Institute, which was FDLA. I presented several programs around the state for them. And as classes came available that was of interest to me or of interest to my agency, then I would try to get involved in those and find out what it was all about so that I could use that in the training seminars that I did for them.
That was in 1983. FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement Organized Crime Institute. This was a special police focus on criminal and extremist terror. National Conference for Violence. Or on violence, I should say, not for violence.
I believe I was a speaker at that conference, if I remember correctly. In any event, it dealt with the terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, the things that were kind of in the forefront of our country during that time period. And if I'm not mistaken, I was part of the program there, but I also attended it when I.
Models for Management Seminar.
This was a training program for managers during that time frame. There were several that were around. The department picked models for management as a program to put the management team. I think the sergeants and up, or maybe lieutenants and up, went to that seminar. Managing people, skills that you need to effectively manage people.
Another one on the commissions on criminal justice training. This is career development certificate, executive development based law enforcement officers.
This is probably a very basic program that it might have been a part of that incentive program I mentioned earlier.
Financial incentive.
Yes, sir. I think so.
Department of the Army, again, this is an advanced marksmanship and control sniper and preparatory course.
Yes, so this was held at MacDill Air Force Base. It was I think it was 1 or 2 days a week for probably about 3 or 4 months. They had specially trained, some of these guys were ex-military snipers that had been in Vietnam, and they came down and shared their experiences, and we also learned how to shoot. Again, it was a long-range training program for long ranges, and we learned how to shoot smaller targets closer, which simulated the long ranges. So it was a very concentrated, it was a national match shooting course is what it started as. A lot of people don't know what that is, but every year they have the national matches in this country at Camp Perry, and that was the program that developed the marksmanship for that program.
State of Florida Department of Law Enforcement Organized Crime Institute Ethnic Crime Seminar.
Yes, sir. One of the things that we always try to do as an agency is to stay as diversified as you can. So when programs came up that offered a different view at the same subject, I always jumped at them.
Florida Institute for Law Enforcement. This is looks like an executive development type of course, psychology of management.
Yes, sir. That was their executive development program that enhances your abilities as a manager of people. In law enforcement, that's a pretty, you think about managing people in private industry, it may not be quite as complicated as managing officers in law enforcement. You have to be aware of the legal aspects, the vicarious liability aspects, and all that stuff. So these programs are designed to keep that in the forefront of your mind.
Florida Institute for Law Enforcement, again, another executive development program, philosophy of management.
Yes,
Similar?
sir. Pretty much the same thing.
Can you move it down just a tiny bit there? There you go. Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission, again, this was an advanced criminal investigation course taught by, I guess, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Yes, sir. I taught criminal investigation at the academy for a number of years. So one of the things that I tried to do is to stay up to date on the latest technology, and that's the class that would have done it for me.
Federal Bureau of Investigation, Executive Development Seminar, again, 1987.
Yeah, that's a perspective from a different agency on the executive models, and I think that was taught at a hotel there in Tampa, but it was a different perspective on the same management program.
Of people.
Yes, sir, managing people.
This is a certificate of appreciation that was presented by the City of Tampa for 20 years of valuable service to your community.
Yes, sir, a certificate by virtue of presence.
State of Florida Department of Criminal Justice Standards and Training, instructor certification. I think this was in 1988, if my eyes are correct.
Yeah, so periodically you had to, in order to keep recertifications, you had to take classes that would give you the opportunity to recertify so that you could keep your instructor certificate. So that would be one of the classes that you would take.
Now, in addition to all these certificates that you were getting, were you in constant communication with tactical units throughout the United States?
Yes, sir. Just about any time that any unit around the country that had any kind of activity that we found out about, sometimes we'd find out about it in the news, sometimes we'd find out through the law enforcement network. Sometimes my contacts at the FBI would let us know. One of the things that I always tried to do was contact that agency, find out what the issue was, found out how they handled it, find out what kind of equipment they used, what they did right, what they did wrong, so that we didn't make the same mistakes if we were confronted with the same situation.
Yes. So those were resources that you were available to, that you all would share.
Yes, sir. I built some resources early on when I started developing the team in 1972, and I carried most of those people through the end of my career.
This is another certificate dealing with police, community relations, and leadership retreat.
Yeah, the city had programs at that time where we had a interaction. Law enforcement management had interaction with the minority community. Some of them were mandatory, some of them you signed up for. This just happened to be one of the ones that I went to.
It's another one dealing with police-community relationship and leadership in that particular aspect of law enforcement.
Yes, sir. I think during that time period, I was kind of assigned to one of the districts, I think, and when these kind of sympathy things came up, they kind of sent me out as the representative from the police department. So they tried to keep me updated on how to make those presentations, and and because everybody, the interaction with a lot of the community was sometimes adversarial. My job was to go out there and turn that around.
This was another managing incidents courses, and not only managing incidents, but this was a managing major incidents course. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it was. I was on a couple of different committees, and one of the things that we found is oftentimes some of the small jurisdictions didn't have the capabilities to respond to the type of emergencies they might be faced with. So through a committee, we thought it was a good idea to have some classrooms on how to interact with agencies that you don't necessarily work with on a regular basis. And sometimes you can't communicate with them on your radio systems. And nobody had really had to do that successfully up to that point. So this program kind of helped get everybody on the same page so that if they did have an emergency and they were able to work together, they could do so effectively.
Delray Beach Police Department Street Survival 1989, the Tactical Edge Seminar.
Yes, sir. That was a program that kind of elaborates on the thing that we've been talking about, the officer survival. The emphasis on that particular one there was how to go home at the end of your shift, how to be effective, how to anticipate danger, how to. One of the things that we always had not a conflict with, but one of the things that was always an issue was, as the violence escalates, an officer has so many tools on his belt until he has to be able to respond instantaneously with the right tool, under the right circumstances. And of course, if you don't do it, you'll be criticized. So that program was designed to impart to the participants some training ideas that would help out in that in dealing with those issues.
Another street survival, 1989. This actually happened. Looks like it was conducted by Caliber Press
Right.
in 1989.
I think it tacked on to the previous one, and I think it was the WIN seminar that was a heavy emphasis on training an officer on how to anticipate danger, react accordingly, and go home at the end of shift. So it was a program that you can share with your officers that may increase their survivability rate.
The International Association of Chief of Police, SWAT Supervisors, Tactics and Management, 1989.
That was several other agencies around the state had been developing their SWAT teams and were coming to us for some leadership and direction. I was trying to help them out. The IACP kind of picked up on the fact that it was becoming a little bit of a popular thing around there, so they put together a conference over there for most of the agencies, actually in the southeastern United States, but mostly for Florida. And it was designed to impart the tactics and how to manage a SWAT team. I don't remember specifically, but I may have been a speaker at that conference.
Another certificate of appreciation, 25 years. We can move to the next one. Department of Law Enforcement, this was a mutual aid issue concerning your SWAT team, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That was the Executive Institute, I think. Yeah, with DLE, FDLE. That was kind of what I alluded to earlier on how agencies can work together effectively to combat a common problem. Fire departments had been doing that for a couple of years. Law enforcement agencies were not quite as successful, so it was a kind of a statewide effort to try to get everybody on the same page so they knew what the expectations were.
And this is Tactical Response Teams presents to Captain C.J. Reeves in recognition of 15 years of tenacity. You can read it for me.
Guile and devotion to our calling. That was presented to me after 15 years when I was transferred over and became the commander of the bomb squad.
And this is a certificate you received in 1991 titled Diversity.
Yes, sir. That was how to function effectively in your communities. That's what you're learning how to do, and you're hoping to train your officers to do that.
Another one dealing with, I guess, demonstrations in the 1990s, the law enforcement response.
Yes, sir. That's, again, the civil disorder that I alluded to earlier. One of the earlier ones I went to is for different schools. How to organize and equip your officers to respond to an emergency with a large group of officers. That was the field force concept that I put into effect in Tampa.
Okay. This is just a certificate of appreciation.
Yeah, this like I mentioned to you earlier, oftentimes I was called upon to go out into the community either by virtue of my assignment or by virtue of perhaps my personality, I don't know, but I was oftentimes called to go out to the community to address these meetings and to address their concerns about the crime in the community, that sort of thing.
And this is the Fraternal Order of Police, your retirement certificate that took place in 1993.
Yes, sir, that's the one I've been looking for a long time.
Okay. I think we've got one more.
Oh, okay.
This was a plaque that was given to you for over 27 years of dedicated service between 1966 and 1993 by the city of Tampa to Captain Curtis J. Reeves.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
This may be a good time to take a break. And use that.
15 minutes.
All right.